Hello, everybody. Breaking-ish news coming to you from no one unscripted because currently I'm in a la la land of uh, all the playlists and all the categorizations. But this is an update of what's going on, right? First of all, welcome. If you haven't been here before, please subscribe. And if you like what you hear from me, like and share. So, I extensively went over the uh, 9th January 6th hearing in an episode just today, last night for you. And I wanted to pick out some points of it that stuck out to me and sort of do it in a more impromptu way, sort of, go unscripted as I started out. The connections between the Oath Keepers and the uh, Secret Service has deepened over time, and we learned from the January 6th hearing that the Secret Service had knowledge of what was going on, extensive knowledge, enough to know that something was going to happen. And there is this connection between the Secret Service and the Oath Keepers that has come up in the committee's investigation. And as we're learning from Stuart Rhodes' trial, seditious conspiracy trial, that there are connections between Stuart Rhodes and the Secret Service. And it may well come out as the trial continues as to whether Secret Service was the point of contact for Stuart Rhodes to get the orders once Donald invoked the Insurrection Act. So we're going to find out how far it went and who the people were that connected Stuart Rhodes to knowledge, express knowledge somehow that Donald would invoke the Insurrection Act and deputize them and mobilize them. And Roger Stone is one way, and Secret Service is another way. So it's it's just unfolding in congruence with the Department of Justice's investigation of the Stuart Rhodes seditious conspiracy. Not only are these echoes, these are the same events that are happening in two different branches of government, and they're parallel investigations. DOJ doesn't have information that January 6th committee has unless the DOJ has asked for it and the committee has agreed to turn it over. So maybe it has some information, but it definitely doesn't have everything that the committee has. And the committee definitely does not have anything that the DOJ has, independent of what it has asked for from the committee. So, I want to, and this ninth hearing brought to the forefront what Donald was doing on the inside when he realized he lost. He was working to withdraw American troops from Somalia and Afghanistan about 6 months after he had forced the Afghanistan's rightfully elected, democratically elected government to sign a peace deal with the Taliban and release thousands of Taliban fighters who then went on to take over Afghanistan the moment President Biden left Afghanistan. And that hastiness of it was why 13 American soldiers were killed because of terrorist bombing. And it was delayed 6 months, but Donald wanted to do that before he left office, thereby destabilizing Afghanistan and that entire region, which is not very far from Russia, Ukraine, the Middle East, and then handing Joe Biden an even bigger mess than he was already going to have to deal with COVID killing an average of 1,000 people, or I don't know, 2,000 people on a weekly basis, or something really like absurd and like astonishing. And the fact that Donald, out of his vindictiveness and out of commitments he had made to foreign nations that were adversarial to America's interest, ordered these acts of withdrawal, and were essentially, the generals and the colonels in charge of it effectively didn't carry out the order. It would have destabilized the entire area even faster than it was destabilized or shaken up after the troop withdrawal. I think that was 6 months after. I think maybe it was August or something like that in 2021. So and then you sort of, the information sort of bleeds in, right? And then you have Roger Stone's name. Roger Stone's name just comes up over and over and over again. Not only was he a close associate and advisor of Donald Trump, not only was he pardoned by Donald Trump at the very end of Donald Trump's presidency for lying to Congress, he also went out and said, "Do hell with the votes. 9/10, ownership is nine tenths of the possession is ownership," or something like that, and just stay in power. We won. Fuck you. I mean, the blatant irreverence and the seditious overtness of this is, and he pled the fifth every time asked by the committee under oath. He has connections with Enrique Tarrio. They're close associates. And we learned that Enrique Tarrio went to the White House on December 12th. I hope we learn more about that. We also learned that Joshua James, one of the people who was already pled guilty to seditious conspiracy, the Alabama leader of the OathKeepers militia, was Roger Stone's bodyguard on January 5th. And Roger Stone was at the Willard Hotel room, sort of managing the seditious war room. Donald Trump wanted Mark Meadows to go there on January 5th. Mark Meadows is asserting executive privilege and not cooperating with the January 6th committee. And Stuart Rhodes, whose trial is ongoing right now, the updates from those trials, that trial is just constantly reaffirming the planning and the coordination that went into January 6th. They were having drills. They were teaching people where to shoot on the chest, like here, and like talking about assault weapons or attack weapons. Handguns are more defensive, and it's the fact that they were doing it so casually, the fact that they were stashing weapons in Virginia across the river, and they were talking about it. It just goes to show, and they took all the steps, and then Mike Flynn and Mark Meadows and Steve Bannon and Roger Stone, these people, Mark Meadows, and who else? Peter Navarro. These people are all in legal jeopardy, and there will be many more who don't cooperate and somehow get themselves out of legal trouble. They will face indictments, but the bigger point is, like, we learn how close we came and how close we still are, because these elements of sedition and treason continue to this day. Donald Trump continues to lie Donald Trump is continuing to be combative. And we know from testimony of Mr. Van Tattenhoff, we know from the trial, we know from Secret Service text, this idea that we know these people have rifles. How many more are there? So, and I asked this question before. We know about Thomas Caldwell's death list, but how many more death lists are there? And when will they get sort of activated? When will those suicide cells be activated? Because if you look at it from an insurgency standpoint, January 6th, what happened, the OathKeepers and Proud Boys and all of the groups and people who were violent and who were found to be conspiring and who will be found to be conspiring and who will be indicted, these people, what was I saying? I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. But the bigger picture is what I wanted to talk to you about, I think, is Secret Service and the connections with the Secret Service, Roger Stone. These have massive implications on our institutions. It has, the threats that are coming out on election workers are ongoing. The threats that continue, and the internal threats by people, election deniers, standing for election deniers, going into work as poll workers. These things are continuous attacks. And Donald Trump's big lie, he continues it. And this is breaking our republic. And every single day that it continues to happen, it breaks our republic. Because Donald is prosecuting all of this in a court of public opinion. This will get to a court of law one day. But by the time it does, there will be so much pain and so much hurt and so much division that will already have been sown by Donald's antics. The damage is being done, and not only from a national security standpoint, but from a societal standpoint. Every single day, as more and more people, you know, are inundated by these lies, we have the problem continues, the lies continue. Kash Patel's book is inundating children. And on that note, I would like to transition to another point that we learned while the hearings were going on and while Donald Trump's SCOTUS appeal was denied. And we learned that Kash Patel and one other person, I forget who the other person, Mark Short, I think that was Vice President Pence's chief of staff. They were both seen in and around the January 6th grand jury area yesterday. And when they were leaving that courthouse, soon after they left, the lead counsel of the January 6th grand jury also left soon after. So I expect Kash Patel to slowly quiet down because he's maybe realizing how serious this is, or maybe not. I really don't care. He's going to be indicted one way or another. If he chooses to completely do what Roger Stone and Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro and Mark Meadows and the rest of Mike Flynn, they have done. So, this bleeds into the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is the GOP's political strategy. As we learned from Mehmet Oz standing in front of a Nazi car Adolph's car, as we learned from Tuberville's racist comments, as we learned from Representative Don Bacon's lies about Senator Warnock and his position on abortion. Their position is to sow lies, sow controversy, and with Herschel Walker, do the most absurd things to stay in the news, to get the numbers, to get their name out. They are literally applying that rule that there's no such thing as bad publicity to propel their fascist ideology, while on the side also, doing these stunts of standing in front of Adolf Hitler's car and saying overtly racist things like Tuberville did. And so it's a political strategy of shock and awe, of militancy, of fascism, and staying in the view, staying in plain view, doing these crimes, defying the rule of law, having a reckless disregard for the rule of law, are the tenets of fascism and authoritarianism and following one ruler instead of the rule of the people, of democracy, of our Constitution. And, that's their strategy, that's their platform. And there's no reason to believe that if they ever were to get this platform in power and in not even majority, a minority government power, like Donald was, because he never won the popular vote, then the United States would turn into a fascist nation, and Russia under Putin would look like a cakewalk, because the United States actually has the capital and the means to mobilize, and the army of the United States is exponentially larger and better equipped than the Russian army. So the threat will continue as long as we don't have accountability, as long as Donald is not indicted, as long as the top seditionists are not indicted, as long as it is not said that the January 6th lie, the big lie of Donald Trump, that the 2020 election was stolen, is incitement. It is not protected speech. And it is not legal speech. Now, whether private platforms take it out or not is entirely up to them. The last thing I want to talk to you about is that SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, has in one sentence denied Donald's partial appeal of the 11th Circuit Special Master Order that gave the DOJ the partial stay that the DOJ requested as to those 100 classified documents. This, if you take in conjunction with the Ken Paxton lawsuit that came up in the hearing yesterday, that he lost because of standing, because Texas does not have the right to say what other states and how other states conduct their election procedures, that was thrown out by the Supreme Court on the basis of standing. The second case was Trump v. Thompson, that was against the January 6th committee, getting documents from the National Archives pertaining to January 6th. The Supreme Court sided with the committee and said that there was, the matter of executive privilege of a former POTUS didn't come up. We're not going to talk about it. And Donald lost. And with this outright denial, with one sentence, the Supreme Court couldn't be any more trite and pointed and, definitive in their denial of Donald Trump's bogus, frivolous, and obstructionist lawsuits that have come to the Supreme Court. So 3 Supreme Court cases have come out in the last 2 years that Donald has lost. That is the Ken Paxton case. I think it's Texas, obviously Texas v. something. There's the Texas Trump v. Thompson case, and now that there's a special master case. And that should give you an idea that despite the fact that there's a militant SCOTUS when it comes to unenumerated rights and several other very, very established tenets of the Supreme Court's stare decisis, or law as it stands, is reassuring that SCOTUS would, in one sentence, deny it. It means that SCOTUS has restored a semblance of legitimacy to the judicial process, not to the Supreme Court itself. And I would have really liked for the Supreme Court to outright, just on its own, sua sponte, said this whole special master review thing is an outright overreach, and we are just going to throw it out. But I think maybe they did not, because they wanted to give the trial court, the 11th Circuit deference, and let the 11th Circuit handle the full appeal. And we'll know about the full appeal by Thanksgiving. I think the oral arguments may happen after Thanksgiving or something of that sort, in an expedited manner. So that's where we are with all of the updates. We are heading into a very active 3 months, and we are going to see a lot of changes. We're going to see Donald becoming a lot more belligerent, a lot more bellicose. There's news coming out internationally that Donald Trump is now warning of World War III. Donald Trump will try to disrupt society in any way he can from now to the point that he's going to be indicted, because the special master review case has now gone up and been expedited by the 11th Circuit because of Judge Cannon's antics, mind you. And the special master review may be ongoing, but that's dependent on how the 11th Circuit rules. Donald may appeal that to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court may look at it, but I suspect the Supreme Court will affirm the 11th Circuit's ruling. And I expect the 11th Circuit would rule overwhelmingly, unanimously in favor of the Department of Justice. And that ball is rolling, and Donald can't do anything about it. Donald has been subpoenaed by the January 6th committee, and that may roll him up. He might have this idea that he can delay and keep that going along for some time, or try to cause some sort of, I'll go and testify and create this huge ruckus there. But I have a feeling that if Donald's hearing and testimony is not live, televised, and publicized, that Donald will not testify. That's what I feel about it. But maybe he will. I don't know. That would be an aberration of anything that Donald has ever done. He would do it only to disrupt. He would do it only to publicize. He would do it only to raise more money for his legal funds and for, I don't know, maybe his getaway yacht or something like that. Because, the January 6th committee is going to keep going. But mind you, at the same time, the January 6th grand jury that has been impaneled by the DOJ is also conducting its investigation and review. So those indictments or decisions to indict, or whether or not to indict on Donald's crimes based on actions of January 6th and anything around it, that's also, the ball is rolling. There's nothing Donald can stop to stop a federal grand jury process. There's nothing Donald Trump can do to stop SCOTUS's opinion ruling, and now the 11th Circuit. He has exhausted everything. And he is not going to be able to escape it unless he takes a paddle boat to Cuba. So, with that, I'd like to say thank you to anybody who has watched. If you haven't subscribed or liked, please do. If you like the material, if you don't like it, please unlike. And please share. I will keep coming on and giving you these updates as I see. My the way that I'm doing these segments is going to flip around, change. I'm trying to figure out what to do to increase my viewership. So I would really appreciate if you would like and subscribe. It helps a lot with the algorithm. I have no idea what that means. I don't even know what a podcast means. I'm just here talking about the things that I understand, which is constitutional law. And now turning out to be, I've been talking about it for 2 years. I feel like I can teach seditious conspiracy and this whole incident. Like, give me a class to lecture about January 6th and Donald's seditious conspiracy, and I can pretty much recite it. I've been living in it for the last 2 years. On November 10th, 2022, it'll be 2 years that I issued my first warning about Donald Trump's seditious conspiracy. And you can check the videos of all of the warnings that I issued. The live streams are timestamped, so that tells you when I issued those warnings. So with that, thank you. Please like and subscribe. I think I've said it too many times. Okay. Ta-ta.